What drives a queen to rule through fear, cunning, and relentless ambition? Cersei Lannister, the Shadow Queen of Westeros, hides a mind as brilliant as it is dangerous. But what shaped her darkness? And what truths about love, power, and obsession lurk behind her every choice? Today, we dive deep into the psychology of a ruler who rewrites the rules, leaving everyone questioning what is right and what is survival. Cersei Lannister's story begins in the heart of King's Landing, a city of grandeur and constant intrigue. Born into the wealthy and politically powerful Lannister family, she was immediately surrounded by whispers of ambition, loyalty, and hidden agendas. Her childhood, though luxurious in material comforts, was a landscape of careful observation and subtle emotional warfare. Every glance, every unspoken word, taught her that perception often mattered more than truth. Even as a young girl, Cersei displayed a keen awareness of power dynamics. She watched her father, Tywin, maneuver through politics with a calculating mind, recognizing early that strength was measured not by force, but by influence. Her mother's distant behavior and her complicated relationship with her brother Jaime added layers to her understanding of loyalty and manipulation. Cersei learned that love and fear were not mutually exclusive, they were tools, and survival depended on knowing when to use each. Psychologically, this environment nurtured both resilience and a profound sense of entitlement. Research in developmental psychology suggests that children raised in high-pressure environments, where affection is conditional or strategically given, often develop heightened social intelligence, emotional acuity, and a tendency towards strategic thinking. In Cersei's case, these traits evolved into a sharper, more defensive form: hypervigilance, anticipation of betrayal, and an instinct to control outcomes before others could act against her. The seeds of her ambition were further nourished by societal expectations. Westeros's patriarchal hierarchy constantly reminded her that a woman's power was limited, that she would always be measured against men's achievements. This awareness did not lead her to submission. It ignited a burning drive to subvert expectations, to manipulate the system rather than challenge it directly. Every smile, every whispered word became a calculated step towards survival and dominance. Yet, beneath her early brilliance, subtle cracks began forming. She carried with her a growing awareness that affection could be weaponized, that alliances were fragile, and that a single misstep could invite disaster. These formative years laid the groundwork for a mind both brilliant and ruthless, preparing her for the inevitable moments of betrayal and opportunity. But there was something nobody foresaw approaching, a force that would test every instinct she had cultivated, forcing her to confront her own darkness in ways the world had not yet imagined. The world around Cersei was not built for kindness. Early betrayals and whispered threats shaped her perception that trust was a dangerous luxury. Yet, it wasn't until adolescence that the first true rupture occurred, a moment that would begin molding the woman who would rule through shadows. The political games of King's Landing collided with personal heartbreaks, forcing her to confront the fragile nature of alliances and the volatility of emotions. Cersei's relationships, especially with her family, carried hidden dangers. Her bond with Jaime, while rooted in affection, was tainted by secrecy and societal condemnation. Psychologists call this a codependency of power and identity, where two people derive self-worth and safety through mutual, yet socially perilous, loyalty. For Cersei, Jaime became both a mirror and a shield. When external threats arose, her instinct was to protect and control simultaneously, a duality that would define much of her adult life. The external pressures of court life amplified her inner conflict. Every royal gathering, every strategic marriage, every conversation carried hidden threats. Her father's lessons in manipulation and patience became the lens through which she evaluated the world. If you hesitate, someone else will seize control. Cognitive studies suggest that repeated exposure to high-stakes social environments strengthens executive function, the ability to plan, anticipate outcomes, and regulate emotional responses. But in Cersei, this also birthed a heightened suspicion and an intolerance for vulnerability. The psychological shift became evident in her adolescence. Cersei began rationalizing behaviors that others would view as extreme. Her first conscious manipulations, small lies, strategic alliances, subtle provocations, were experiments in control. Each success reinforced the idea that influence could be wielded more effectively than open confrontation. Neuroscientists note that such reinforcement can ingrain behavioral patterns, shaping moral reasoning in ways that prioritize outcomes over conventional ethics. For Cersei, power was not merely desirable. It was essential for survival. Yet, while her strategic mind sharpened, the cost was accumulating internally. The child who once sought approval from her parents now found herself seeking validation through dominance, creating a cycle of fear, control, and self-protection. Every calculated move concealed a vulnerability that few could perceive, yet it fueled her relentless drive. And it was there, in the quiet moments of observation, that the first signs of a larger, more consuming transformation emerged. A darkness not born of malice, but of necessity and survival began to solidify. And it was in this crucible that everything would start to unravel. And so it began. The delicate balance between brilliance and obsession, trust and suspicion. And it was there that everything quietly began to collapse. By the time Cersei stepped fully into the corridors of power, her mind had become a labyrinth of strategy and guarded emotion. What once were survival instincts had evolved into a sophisticated architecture of influence, anticipation, and manipulation. She no longer reacted, she orchestrated. Every gesture, every word, every glance was calculated to maintain control and foresee threats before they could surface. It was not cruelty for its own sake, rather, a disciplined method of self-preservation and dominance. Her actions now reflected a mind sharpened by experience and fortified by trauma. When confronting rivals or navigating court intrigues, Cersei demonstrated what psychologists term instrumental intelligence, a capacity to anticipate others' behaviors and adapt in real time, maximizing outcomes for oneself. Her ability to read subtle cues, interpret intentions, and predict reactions became legendary. The public only saw her composure. Those closest glimpsed the relentless calculus behind every decision. Cersei's relationships grew increasingly transactional. Allies were measured for loyalty, usefulness, and the potential for future leverage. Even family ties, once a source of emotional support, became tools within her strategic matrix. Neuroscience suggests that repeated reinforcement of this kind of behavior strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for planning and executive function, while also heightening sensitivity to social threats. In Cersei, this neurological adaptation translated into near-constant vigilance and the capacity to execute long-term strategies that others would consider improbable or reckless. Yet within this carefully structured darkness, fissures of desire and obsession remained. The pursuit of love, recognition, and validation intersected dangerously with her drive for control. Every calculated decision contained emotional undertones, a fear of abandonment, a craving for admiration, a quiet defiance of perceived injustice. These undercurrents created a psychological tension that amplified both her brilliance and her ruthlessness. Her mind became a blend of logic and emotion, where the two coexisted uneasily, each shaping the other in subtle ways. The evolution of Cersei's mind reached a point where the line between protection and dominance blurred. She no longer simply reacted to threats. She preempted them, often before they existed. And while many admired her cunning, few recognized the depth of calculation it required. Every step forward was both a shield and a sword, every smile a potential snare. But even as she mastered the art of structured darkness, there was a latent force, a deeper, more terrifying potential within her psyche, waiting to awaken. The transformation was not complete, and the true magnitude of her strategic mind remained concealed. The real challenge and the real power was yet to be revealed, for the true force of Cersei's evolution still lay dormant. There comes a moment in every calculated life where hesitation becomes a liability, where the careful balance of strategy and emotion tips irreversibly. For Cersei, this point arrived quietly, almost imperceptibly, in the intricate dance of King's Landing's court. Her instincts had been honed over decades, a lifetime of observation, manipulation, and anticipation. And yet, the pressures of survival, combined with ambition and desire, forced her to act decisively, crossing thresholds she had once only contemplated in private thought. Psychologically, this moment represents a shift from defensive strategy to proactive dominance. Cognitive theory explains that when stress and opportunity converge, individuals with high executive function often rationalize actions that others might consider extreme. For Cersei, every decision became a test of consequence, weighed against both immediate advantage and long-term survival. The city itself became her chessboard, its people her pieces, and every move further entrenched her in a path from which retreat was impossible. Cersei's moral reasoning evolved alongside her strategy. No longer guided purely by conventional ethics, she justified her actions through a lens of necessity and inevitability. Psychologists describe this as a form of moral rationalization, where decisions are framed as protective or preemptive, rather than aggressive. To the outside observer, her choices could seem shocking, but in her mind, they were logical extensions of a world defined by risk, betrayal, and impermanence. Every relationship, every alliance, and every rival was evaluated not only for loyalty, but for potential disruption. This transformation also exposed the deeper layers of Cersei's psyche. Love, ambition, fear, and desire intertwined, creating a tension that influenced both thought and behavior. Neuroscientific studies suggest that when high-stakes decision-making is paired with emotional intensity, the brain prioritizes long-term strategy over social norms. In Cersei's case, the consequence was a heightened capacity for foresight, tempered by a willingness to embrace uncomfortable truths about human nature and survival. The act of crossing the threshold, the moment she no longer held back, was not reckless. It was the culmination of years of observation, planning, and emotional calibration. And yet, even as her power solidified, a shadow of doubt lingered. What if the path she believed necessary was flawed? What if her perception of inevitability masked unseen consequences? The audience is invited into a psychological paradox. To understand her reasoning is to question our own moral frameworks. Cersei's journey challenges the notion of right and wrong, replacing it with survival and calculation. And as she stepped past the point of no return, the question remained hauntingly unresolved. If survival demands it, and logic justifies it, can anyone truly judge the choices made in the shadows? Cersei's actions, when viewed from the outside, can appear chaotic or unpredictable. Yet beneath the surface, a rigorous internal logic governs every decision. Her strategy is not born of impulse. It is rooted in a profound understanding of human behavior, social dynamics, and the vulnerabilities of those around her. Psychologists would describe this as a combination of Machiavellian intelligence and high emotional acuity, the ability to manipulate social hierarchies while anticipating emotional responses with precision. Her rise to dominance demonstrates a consistent pattern: identify the weak points in others, predict reactions, and influence outcomes before opposition can mobilize. Case studies in behavioral psychology show that individuals with this mindset often excel in complex, high-stakes environments, precisely because they perceive connections and consequences that most overlook. For Cersei, threats are rarely direct. They are subtle, layered, and carefully orchestrated. Every whisper, every rumor, every subtle gesture is part of a strategy designed to shape perception and secure control. Even her interpersonal relationships follow this logic. Allies are valued for strategic utility, while adversaries are analyzed for predictability and leverage. Cognitive science suggests that such mental frameworks enable a person to navigate intense social pressure without succumbing to panic or indecision. In Cersei's mind, what might seem ruthless or extreme is instead a calculated response to risk. The horror perceived by others is simply the manifestation of a mind operating according to its own rigorous rules, a logic system that prioritizes preservation and power above sentiment. Real-world parallels further illuminate her methods. Historical figures who operated in high-stakes political arenas often exhibited similar patterns of behavior: anticipation, manipulation, and preemptive action. By examining these cases, one can see how Cersei's choices mirror those of leaders and strategists who understood that control often requires difficult, morally ambiguous decisions. Her genius lies not in randomness or chaos, but in the consistency of her approach. Each move reinforces the structure of her dominance, revealing that what appears as malice is actually precise calculation. And yet, even as her logic solidifies, a chilling realization emerges. Cersei's actions are not impulsive, nor are they mistakes. They are deliberate, methodical, and unflinchingly strategic. To outsiders, it may seem impossible to reconcile her brilliance with her ruthlessness. But psychology explains that in minds like hers, rationality and emotion are entwined, producing behaviors that are as fascinating as they are unsettling. And so the ultimate revelation becomes clear. It is not madness that guides her, nor mere chance. Every outcome is part of a plan, every consequence foreseen. It was never about chaos. It was about control, meticulously executed and terrifyingly precise. After decades of strategy, manipulation, and careful calculation, Cersei Lannister leaves a world forever altered. The streets of King's Landing, the courts of Westeros, and the loyalties of those around her bear the imprint of her influence. Her legacy is not merely one of power, it is a testament to the interplay between intellect, emotion, and the drive for survival. Every alliance she forged, every obstacle she removed, and every subtle maneuver contributed to a landscape shaped by her vision, one where fear and respect coexist in uneasy balance. Psychologically, her legacy demonstrates how sustained high-stakes decision-making shapes identity. Longitudinal studies in social psychology suggest that individuals who continuously navigate complex, high-pressure environments develop a unique cognitive resilience. Cersei's mind, once molded by childhood pressures, trauma, and ambition, evolved into an instrument capable of perceiving and predicting human behavior with near uncanny accuracy. Her influence extends beyond the tangible. It lingers in the fears, choices, and ambitions of others who must now operate under the shadow she has cast. Yet her story is not only about domination. It is also a reflection on the consequences of such intelligence and ambition. The pursuit of control often comes at the cost of personal fulfillment, trust, and authentic connection. Cersei's relationships, forged through strategy and observation, reveal the delicate tension between power and vulnerability. Philosophers and psychologists alike might ask, when survival demands calculation and manipulation, what room remains for empathy, spontaneity, or moral clarity? Her world illustrates the paradox of the powerful. They shape reality, yet they are forever shaped by the very forces they seek to control. Cersei's legacy challenges us to examine our own responses to fear, ambition, and the pressures of society. She invites reflection on the human mind's capacity for strategy, resilience, and adaptation, as well as the ethical dilemmas that arise when survival and power collide. In a way, her story is a mirror. a demonstration of how circumstances, psychology, and environment can transform intellect into influence, and influence into something simultaneously awe-inspiring and intimidating. Her calculated methods leave an indelible mark, teaching that the mind is often the most formidable tool of all. And yet, as her reign concludes, a question lingers, unresolved and haunting. If brilliance, strategy, and adaptation can shape the world so profoundly, how many others walk the same path unseen? Cersei may no longer rule, but the pattern she demonstrated, the fusion of intellect, ambition, and emotion remain, hinting at the cycles of influence and power yet to come. Perhaps she was not the last. Perhaps the shadows she mastered are simply waiting for the next mind capable of navigating them. And so, her story closes not with an ending, but with a reflection on human nature, the allure of power, and the enduring complexity of the mind. Cersei Lannister's story is a testament to the power of intellect and survival instincts. Her choices, shaped by trauma, ambition, and perception, leave a world transformed and a mind that continues to fascinate. Who truly understands the balance between logic, emotion, and morality? And who can say where such shadows will appear next? The legacy of the Shadow Queen endures, provoking reflection on power, resilience, and the human psyche.